All right, ladies, are we ready? All right, so I'm Genevieve, and I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about some of the women that we're going to be chatting to tonight. We'll start at the end. This is Anne Pasternak, and Anne is the president and artistic director of Creative Time. Creative Time is this really amazing organization. I think you might have heard of, or you would know them from those beautiful towers of light that come up on the anniversary of 9/11 every year. And Creative Time has collaborated with hundreds of artists to ignite the public's imagination, explore ideas that shape society, and bring groundbreaking public art to millions of people around the world. So that's Anne. Then we've got Katie Ford. So Katie is the former CEO of Ford Models, and she left Ford Models in 2008 to start Freedom for All, which is an organization that works against human trafficking. And since she left in 2008, Katie has, through a variety of measures, worked to combat modern-day slavery, including becoming a member of the UN Gift Women Leaders and speaking at the UN Conference to Combat Human Trafficking in Vienna. And then we've got Deborah. Deborah is the Chief Executive Officer of Red, which is a brand I think probably most of you are aware of. Red was founded in 2006 by Bono and Bobby Shriver to engage businesses and consumers to help fight AIDS in Africa. Deborah joined the brand in 2011, and under her leadership, Red has worked with just about everyone in the global partnership space, from Coca-Cola to everyone else. And they have continuously pushed the boundaries for how social media is used for social good. With Deborah at the helm, Red has been recognized as the first cause to have reached over a million on Facebook and Twitter, and it also set a new record with the largest nonprofit check-in campaign on Foursquare to date, working in partnership with Starbucks and raising $250,000 in just 8 days. So these are our panelists today, ladies, and what we are going to... It's a really good group. And what we're going to talk about today, I think I'm going to move this way. Is that better so I can see you? We're looking at three women whose organizations in their own way have really revolutionized the way that philanthropy and the philanthropic space works. And they've each done it in their own way. Whether like with Red, they have sort of changed the way that philanthropies engage with corporations and how we work partnerships. Or with Creative Time, how you use art to really move a public message and public opinion. Or with Freedom for All, how you really take two previously maybe not considered to be related ideas of background in fashion and put it together with something that seems complicated but is very related, like human trafficking. So together, the three of them are going to talk a little bit about how those organizations have broken the mold and how they really cut out from the millions of philanthropic organizations that are going on to really help get their messages heard and change public opinion. So the first question I have for all three of you is, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the world, and it's incredible how many organizations there are out there that really want to help. But how do you feel your work is able to cut through the noise and really make an impact?
It's not easy to do, right? There's so much clutter, there's so much going on. How do you show up? Red started and we really tried to break the mold from the beginning. Our model is different. We go after the private sector. We go after companies. And in a time when 30 million had died of AIDS and 35 million still had the disease, Red was for urgency to try to get people to realize this is a preventable disease, and it's something that if we all work together, we could actually take from the planet, like polio. In 2006, at that time you probably had like Ben & Jerry's and maybe Tom's, Paul Newman sauce, but there weren't really a lot of products for good. Bono and Bobby Shriver were solving a problem. The problem was that the Global Fund, which had been set up by the UN to fight malaria, tuberculosis, and AIDS, was getting billions and billions of dollars from countries around the world, but companies had only given $5 million. So since that time, and that Red became sort of a disruptive innovation in philanthropy, we've raised $215 million. which has had incredible impact and reached about 14 million lives. I say that not to get the applause, but to say that the only way I think that we did was sort of differentiating our model. We don't fundraise. We don't ask teens to go into their pockets, do something cool on their birthday. Those are all fabulous things. We go for the big shift in corporate money, and that's a different mold. And by being provocative and trying to get teens to do something super, super easy so that they feel good about themselves, and maybe they're taking their first step to giving a poop and becoming an activist. It could be really easy. You just buy the red Nano instead of the white one when you're in the Apple store, and you feel a little bit better about yourself, and then somebody else says to you, oh, you must care about AIDS, and then you think, maybe I should. So it's a different model, but I think we've been able to consistently sort of break through by that approach.
So when I started, I obviously came from a very different background, and I could really see the similarities between how we brought models across borders and how people were trafficked across borders. And because of that, I used my previous skill set to launch campaigns and to use my connections to help people locally. So the most recent thing we did was have a conference for judges in Brazil, which seems very unrelated, but it actually, through different connections, we've managed to do initiatives in many different ways. I'm going to let you go on because my background was so relevant in this discussion. So.
Well, Katie, I think you're right that you use what connections and resources you have. Some of us come into our jobs without any connections and resources, and I think that the most important thing, and I know that you both would agree with me, is that you need to be clear about your mission and purpose. You need to know what your unique selling proposition is, what distinguishes you from the rest of the worthy organizations out there, and you really need to brand yourself accordingly. I wouldn't say to you that Creative Time is really innovative in fundraising. What we're innovative in is the artwork that we commission and produce and present and promote. And because we really passionately believe in the artists that we're working with, we put all of our energy into making their radical, ambitious dream projects a reality. And part of that reality is using the press to really push the message. So, we were talking, we have a project in October dealing with trying to move the needle on how gender equity and justice is discussed. When I grew up, we used to call it women's issues. Not really our issues, right, alone? But so we're doing this project, and we have a full page. We're working with at least 100 activist women's organizations in the city, all ages, all ethnicities, all races, all classes. It's a very diverse conversation. We're doing it on front stoops in one block in Brooklyn, and we have a full page article coming out in the New York Times. So part of the way that we innovate in sharing the message is thinking with the artist about who are they trying to target, what are they trying to say, bringing in those stakeholders, doing a tremendous amount of community work when needed, as in this case, and then bringing the press in with us. So many of the organizations we're working with have never been in the New York Times, let alone have the issues that they're excited or engaged with, represented in a full page article. And then there'll be many, many other articles. So, I'm a little all over the place, but I'd say you have to distinguish yourself, you have to know what your mission is, and then, innovation is at every stage of what you do in your work.
Well, I think when we were speaking in preparation for this panel, one of the things that all of you said was that fundraising, that like, hey buddy, can I get $5 for my cause, is something that you sort of tried to take out of your models or isn't a principal part, and you focused more on the ideas behind what it is that you're trying to promote or advocate on behalf of. So can you talk a little bit about why upending that traditional model has been effective and why you chose to go that route?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of groups that do research in this area. And I'm fascinated with the upcoming generation and how they think about changing the world and making it better. I think, like, let's just get out of their way because great things are going to happen. And why is that? Well, a lot of research shows that women now, yeah, they think about giving money, yeah, they think about volunteering, but more they think about being on the board of an organization. Like, how can they use their skill set to actually change the world and enjoy their job at the same time? The same, is true for teens. And just if you look at the economy, there's not a lot of kids that don't have crazy student loans, aren't living at home with their parents, and that doesn't mean they don't want to do the right thing and make a difference and do something great. So I think there's a lot of momentum happening of looking at alternative ways to reach people and to go to where their passions are, like you just described with art, and have them be able to do something quite great in the art world.
I have to say, when I started, I didn't know that I would do any fundraising. I thought I would do only initiatives. And in fact, what happened was, as I got closer and closer to people who had actually been freed, and I actually started to fundraise. It's not the focus of what I do, but I realized how much $25 would mean to someone who has, in fact, been in slavery. So I do that, but it's not the major focus of what I do. And the reason that is really because when I started, I could think of so many things to do that did not involve fundraising, that involved actual things that could be done. Right. And so it's not where I started. I do fundraise, I just don't. It's not my primary focus, and it's not to run my organization. It goes directly to people on the ground.
Well, and your fundraising may not be monetary. It's how you create value in terms of getting judges to change laws in countries about human trafficking, et cetera. So that whole idea of value and how we measure value is a very different model for you, actually.
Right.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I'm very innovative in fundraising. I mean, we have the queen of innovation in fundraising here in Red. But I would say to you that, some of the basic tools are that you have to know who you're asking for money and what are the buttons that you need to push to convince them to say yes. So some people are looking for the most professional organizations, so you have to make sure your audits are all in line and that kind of thing. And some people are looking for the most innovative, and some people are looking for the splashiest and the hippest. So you always need to know who you're talking to. You always have to do that research beforehand. And we haven't done much on the net. In fact, we haven't been successful on the internet space. And I am a big proponent of artists, for example, and other creative people getting funding through portals like Kickstarter, right? Kickstarter's fantastic, but for an organization of my scale, it's too much work for $10,000. It doesn't make any sense, or for $3,000 or whatever it is. So we're still trying to find out that space, but the one thing I think that we have done, which has been innovative for a nonprofit arts organization, is that we had all the consultants come in and tell us all the things that we had to do, and then we tried those things, and then we called out bullshit. Almost none of it worked for us. And instead, for example, everybody, let's say, has their membership groups. And you can pay $300 and you can go to parties. I'm like, really? Do people want to do that? And as it turned out, I didn't want to be with most of the people who are coming to our parties. So we realized that, for example, there were, 40 or 50 at least young people who had really fascinating careers, really accomplished, tons of energy and drive, had so much to present and offer to us, and we weren't able to really collaborate with them because we had 150 other people who just wanted to sell us their real estate or something. So nothing against real estate agents. And so we got rid of our membership program, and we decided that we would have a group of ambassadors who we could work really closely with and really successfully, and has completely transformed the kind of opportunities the organization has, and has significantly increased our budget. Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that that points to is that all of your organizations are now interacting with a new generation of young philanthropists and people who want to be citizen advocates and all of those things. What are the major differences that you see, Deborah, you mentioned this, in the current generation of activists, and how are you speaking to them differently than you think you would have before?
It's so important to step back and look in the last 20 years with the advent of technology, of people being able to collaborate in different ways, not-for-profits, countries, communication, to your point, transparency, so that you can find the dictator that's taken things to an island, because now it's all transparent. So in the last 20 years, and Bono did just do a TED Talk on this, I'm not going to steal his thunder, you should watch it, but it was absolutely fabulous, because what he just said very simply is we've halved extreme poverty in the last 20 years, where it's plagued people from the time of the pharaohs. We've halved children mortality, kids dying. We've halved the number of women passing HIV down to their babies. We've halved people dying from malaria. These things are friggin' staggering and should be, and half the world now has access to clean water. These are UN goals that in the last 20 years we've made such progress, I think, because of technology and because of working together in a different way. And this generation can actually bring it home. I think that we haven't even started. That little Coney video that went everywhere in the world, what was the impact of that? Well, this generation's going to figure out a way to rally and have it have impact. So, I give you an example. We did a Vine campaign. So I always think use the best of tech and don't be afraid to fail. And I know that Sheryl Sandberg, who's on our board, who wrote Lean In, always talks about women and the imposter complex, that you actually think you're not good enough or that you shouldn't trust your judgment. That's such bullshit. Just every time your gut says this is going to make a difference, and people tell you just, oh, well, here are the risks or whatever, you have to take calculated risks, and but if you know your stuff, I think it's better to try than not show up. So when Vine came about, which is like a visual tweet, we decided we were going to break the world record for the most vines for a cause. Well, we couldn't lose because there was no record to really break, but it sounds fabulous, doesn't it? It sounds great. So we went to all these celebrities and Paris Hilton and Jack Dorsey and really strange bedfellows, Tiesto and just said do a vine, and they were like, what is a vine? And all of a sudden it was red, showing them a really easy way to look cool. It's a piece of cake, here, we'll help you do it, or this is the way. And then, we broke the world record. We had, I think it was over 17,000 vines in a short period of time, in less than a day. And then there was a corporation matching, right? So for every vine, boom, $1 to the Global Fund. Those kinds of things of using tech, using an action to trigger something else. I know you've seen it in a million different ways, but that's actually being more effective now than text to donate, which I had thought, oh my God, text to donate is going to be a piece of cake. And it certainly has done great things for Haiti and a lot of campaigns, but people just don't like to do anything difficult. That's what I've learned. So you have to make it just so incredibly simple that by a flick of a moment, you've captured somebody's attention, because that moment will be over. And now there are ways to do that like never before.
What was the original question? Sorry. About you.
That's okay.
About how young people and...
Well, just how the people that you're reaching now are different, than they might have been.
I am amazed with everybody who's young and how interested they are in this my dinner conversations tend to be with 30-somethings and 20-somethings and what they can do, and I end up always asking them questions about what I can do. Because they know so much about technology that I don't know, and teenagers too. I end up asking them as many questions as they are asking me, and I think that is very different than previous generations where you had to learn something over 20 years before you could give advice.
Right.
You know, I really agree with that. And, you know, at Creative Time, we have a number of young people on our board. So we have very major museum patrons who sit on our board, and they love being on the board. It's the smallest gift they give of any of their boards, you know, because to be on a museum board today, you have to give like $5 million a year and blah, blah, blah. But we certainly are, you know, not in that league yet, and probably ever. But they really enjoy it because they're learning so much. You know, it's a real culture of learning. If your board isn't enjoying themselves, if they're not learning, especially if you're a small organization, you've got to really rethink how you're working with your board. But the young people don't necessarily have all the same kinds of major commitments. They really want to dive in on something. They want to learn how to be great philanthropists. And so they're actually among our most active and productive board members. And it's so much fun for this ecology of the board to have people of all these different ages coming together. It makes everybody feel fresh and young and alive. So for us, our fundraising with younger people is primarily through our ambassadors group and through our board. And I look forward to the day when we're able to do successful social campaigns. But you know, not every organization is in the same position of having like the celebrity weight that you have. If a Vine came to me and said, do a competition, I would be like, no way, I'm afraid 17 people are going to participate. I don't want $17 for all that work.
You got 17 artists that were cool.
Well, I can get you 17 artists any day. We'll work together on that.
Well, I have thousands more questions for you guys, but I think if you guys are ready, we'll open up to the room, and if there's anyone that has a question they'd like to ask. I mean, heaven knows I got more.
Does anybody run an
Oh, here we go.
Hi, so I know you started talking about this a little bit before, but what would be your ideal to see the next generation be doing to lead the charge to make the world a better place? Specifically, the next generation of women.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm such a big believer that in developing countries, women are going to change the paradigm in a very, very powerful way. You know, this generation, there was a interbrand study and some other major studies that show that one, you demand that corporations spend the same amount of time on profit as they do social good, that 50-50, that did not exist like 4 years ago. There is a definite movement towards caring about global over local issues, which again, 7 years ago, you would never get a truck driver in Texas to say that he, you know, cares about something that's going on in Africa. Like, it is just a major worldwide shift. And with technology, I feel that this generation could bring it home. I know it sounds so, you know, up high in the sky, but can you imagine if we use the best of old media and new media to do something at the same time to just take care of one issue? So say it's the Super Bowl and everybody's paying attention and we all do X, or it's the World Cup games, or it's the Olympics, or that we use each of these events to just take care of one horrible thing that shouldn't exist, right? Like if all of a sudden everybody focused on sex trafficking, which is a huge issue that nobody even begins to understand, how horrible it is. And the fact that we let it go on, shame on us, right? But I think that this generation has a sensibility where, you know what, if there's enough food on the planet, people shouldn't starve, and it just shouldn't be. It is so refreshing to see, and I think it's like none before you. So I just say get out of your way, and you guys bring it on.
Really? I had to say I'm really enthused by the younger generation. I think that there's a few things that I see. One is a willingness to participate, especially through social. I see people coming together in multi-class, multi-race, multi-ethnic conversations that are unfamiliar to when I was a young woman. And it's really exciting because there's a lot of honest, but very difficult and very honest sharing that goes on that will only benefit us all when we all come together and share our experiences and learn from one another. I'm on a listserv that in the past 3 days went crazy about the issue of gentrification, and it was so productive that people were able to, even though there were tough moments, really talk about their own experiences, their own participation, in ways that I've never seen that kind of conversation happen before. So I think that conversation, hopefully those kinds of conversations lead to a more inclusive dialogue that can actually lead to real change, because I think you can't have change that benefits everybody unless we're all coming together and learning from one another. So to me, that's one of the really exciting things about what's going on right now.
Well, you also talked a little bit, we talked about, I think there's a real willingness to innovate. And each of you said at different points, like, never get comfortable with your model, never do the same thing twice. And it seems that we're dealing with a generation right now who's just really comfortable with that as their plan.
I wanted to talk about something you brought up, two things. One is when young people are seeing things across different continents, actually, and they might hear something on from one continent, and then they call their parents on it, or they call companies on it. That kind of information flow now is so fast and so different. And so different societies actually in social good have to change faster than they used to have to change, because children are spreading the word faster, both to other children but also to their parents.
Well, I think we might have time for one more question if there's a quick one, otherwise then we'll wrap up. Is there another one?
Hi, thank you for your time. My name is Minky. I am the founder of Han Concert, which sponsors impossible projects. And we like to partner with organizations that are touching taboo subjects like North Korea, sanitation issues, etc. And this is a bit specific to my organization, but I was wondering if you could give any advice when we try to engage with the public, their reaction is, whoa, we're not going to touch that. How do you start a conversation on issues that you're really passionate about, but nobody really wants to talk about?
Katie knows all about that.
Well, that has been a big issue for me, because it used to be, when I was model agent, people always wanted to stand around and talk about it. And now you bring it up at cocktail parties, and there's some people are very drawn to it, and other people just say, oh, thank you for your good work, and turn away. And it's really important, actually. The role of, I think, art is really important to touching people's hearts, and also to telling the stories of individuals. Because when you tell a person, the story about a person, they see the person, they hear the words, it's hard for people not to be moved. And if they can't be moved by that, you're probably not going to reach them. So you might as well keep going with the ones who actually are going to reach. And Anne has a lot of experience with reaching people with art. In fact, I'd say it's what her whole organization is about.
I would, without knowing the work that you do, I would just simply say there are times where you need to be provocative and push subjects on people, and there are times where you need to be collaborative and have a kind of great grassroots community building, finding your allies to kind of build the conversation. They're all different strategies, and you just sort of need to know when. I mean, there are times where I don't ask for permission, and I do outrageous things like waterboarding lawyers in Coney Island without getting any permission. And then there are other times where, you know, the tribute in light after 9/11, you couldn't impose that on the public without the public's desire to make something like that happen. So it really depends on the specific issue, and every project you take requires its own strategy, which is the reason why the kind of work we do is so hard, right? Because with everything you undertake, you have to come up with a completely new strategy. You're reinventing the wheel every time.
Yeah, and I would encourage you to be very innovative, because think about red. Who's going to want infectious disease AIDS on their cereal? Right? Nobody would ever say, oh, of my choice, I'm going to go and have my charity be AIDS, right? And so what's the angle? What's the wit? How can you make it? It doesn't have to be provocative. I mean, that's our way, but you need to finesse and maybe find a champion. You know, there's you said a few different causes there. So I love, people will back you because you will start saying, I'm trying to do something impossible here. Like, just that alone grabbed this room. Everybody's like, oh my God, we have to help her. Because that's the coolest thing, is to do the impossible and then watch it change. So, you know, we're gonna have condoms coming out into drugstores, and the tagline is, doing good never felt better. That's getting money for AIDS, right? But we had to come up with something other than say, you know, here's a child with HIV with flies on her face, isn't this horrible, right? We do it a different angle, but that's you know, using some kind of innovation, and it sounds like you've got a lot to go around, so I wish you luck.
I want to be in that conversation next time.
Do I have time for one more question? Yeah. I'm going to say yes. Yeah.
Are you saying like celebrity endorsement as well is a real powerful tool, or?
It is, especially for something taboo. You know, if like, you know, we had basketball players and people come out and say, yeah, I'm HIV positive, or, you know, a woman to say, this happened to me. Those personal stories, you know, and not everybody needs to go the celebrity route, but if you're looking for media attention, or you're looking for a PR angle, sometimes you have to be quite innovative with what you come up with.
Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone so much. I really appreciate it. And thanks to all of you.
Thank you.